The Mets think Pete Alonso is gone. The Mets think it is likelier than not that Pete will go elsewhere, and they're on to plan B. Now, let me give you my initial reaction, and I already know what you all are going to say. You're all going to think I'm a delusional bleep. This is all the negotiation, fellas.
Is it?
I am not ready. Let me give you a little story, real quick synopsis. The world's about to end, okay? We've all been told Earth's going to blow up tomorrow. I'm not one to just say, I guess we're all dead. I'm one to say, you know what? I'll believe it when I see it. So in regards to the latest reporting on Pete Alonso, am I confident they're going to keep him? I'm not confident. But I am not going to come on the radio today and false alarm my fellow Met fans and say, he's gone, and yell at David Stearns and yell at Steve Cohen and yell at Scott Boras. I may get there at some point, but right now, this feels like we are involved in a dirty, bloody, disgusting negotiation between the New York Mets and Scott Boras. So am I confident he's back? I'm not confident, but I am not willing at 2:03, just because a couple of reporters say it's likelier than not that he's gone, they're moving on to plan B. I'm not just going to parrot that and say, oh, gee, he's gone, because I don't believe it yet, Teak.
Yeah, well, I mean, if the world blows up, I don't think any of us will see it to believe it. But
that's true. It'll just hit us.
Yes, but I know what you mean. You asked me this yesterday. What does all this mean? And I'm just trying to read through the lines of what the Mets and the Boras, Pete Alonso camp are working through right now. And I said it yesterday, and I still kind of believe this. The Mets are trying to move on from Pete Alonso without telling us that they're moving on from Pete Alonso, without telling us that they don't want Pete Alonso, without telling us that they'd rather go with someone younger or less expensive or whatever it may be. So to save face, they're going to allow him, and now that obviously the exclusive Met window is open, it's not there anymore because the Blue Jays and other teams, I'm sure, will start talking about a short-term contract as opposed to the 7-year or whatever number of years, 6-7 years that Scott initially had said that Pete wanted and needed. That exclusivity is done. I think the Mets are trying to let someone else take Pete off their hands. So they save face, but also don't make it look like they didn't want him, even though they don't want him.
But that offer has to happen. And until I see another team give Pete Alonso the money and the contract that beats out the Mets offer, which is reported at 3 years with opt-outs for a little less than $90 million, then why should I just assume he's going to get that offer that you're talking about? It isn't there yet.
Well, I mean, we already know the long-term market's not there for Pete. So we don't yet know what the short-term market for Pete is going to be. Because there probably are a good number of teams, including the Blue Jays, by the way,
yes,
who look at Pete Alonso and say, he can help us win in the short term. We're trying to spend money. Nobody will take it, but we're trying to spend money, and we believe that we have a viable enough roster and bullpen and starting lineup and bullpen to actually do something. Pete can help us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, not on a 7-year deal, but maybe on this 3-year deal that he was shopping exclusively to the Mets that we are now have access to. This could work for us. So I think you might see not a ton, but a few more teams start saying, we'll take the 3-year deal that was exclusive to the Mets for a week, but now that it's available to all of us, we'll take that deal. We won't take the long one, but we'll take this one. Is
that
right
short-term one going to be greater than what the Mets have offered?
I don't know, but I get
but we haven't seen it yet.
But I get the sense that the Knicks, I mean, not the Knicks, we're watching Knicks here on MSG, but I get a sense that the Mets might just say, fine, you got a better offer.
You think the Mets are going to pull an offer? That's my other question. If the Mets
I don't know if the Mets have made
They have made an offer. They've made a 3-year offer with opt-outs. We're not sure about the figures on it, but that's the framework of the deal. And they wanted Scott and Pete Alonso to move off of their demands, which are probably for a great more amount of money.
Yeah.
But if that great more amount of money isn't out there from another team, this reeks of a negotiation. This reeks of we're really going to apply the pressure on you now.
Why wouldn't they have done this early? Why earlier? Because it's been a month now, more than a month. Why would they not have had the negotiations that needed to happen beforehand.
Because they needed Scott Boras to get off of the 6-year contract. And over the last week he has. The problem is they're still far away on money. I'll tell you why I don't believe certain things. And the reason I don't believe certain things is not because I'm a fanboy who's just hoping for the right thing. I listen to what people tell me. So I've listened to every word of David Stern's this offseason. And let me tell you a couple things about David Stern's. Number one, when he has been asked about payroll and payroll flexibility, he's always said he can always go back to the owner and ask to go further. Okay. So the fact the Mets, who have a payroll right now that's about $70 million less than last year, they clearly have the financial wherewithal and a willingness to spend money. Yeah. The idea that them signing Jesse Winker or signing Tanner Scott or whatever other pivot that they do would preclude them from signing Alonso if the contract finally moved into a comfort zone of theirs, I don't believe it for a second. I don't believe the Mets are going to be topped out budget-wise because David Stern has already told us numerous times, I could always go to the owner and say, hey, this will help us win. Right. So the idea that they go get Tanner Scott or they've already re-signed Jesse Winker, you know what? That takes them out on Pete Alonso. I don't believe it. I've never heard anything to indicate that's the case, nor are they signing anybody that would block Pete's position. Jesse Winker is a DH. Anthony Santander, if they signed him, he's an outfielder, DH. There is no first baseman they're signing that would literally block Pete Alonso. So everything that they do in this plan B, I'm sorry, we're all being like figureheaded on negotiations here. Anything they do in a plan B doesn't actually take them out on Pete Alonso. So I'm sorry, I'm not just going to pivot what reporters tell us because to me it's obvious this is still a negotiation. And look, if Scott Boras ends up getting Pete Alonso, the 3 years and $95 million he's asking for, and I'm making that figure up. I don't know the figure he wants, and that's what the Blue Jays finally come in on, and David Stern says, well, I don't think you're worth it, then yes, he'll be gone, and I'll be upset and scream and yell. But that offer isn't out there yet. So I'm sorry. I'm not just going to follow what reporters who are leaking or getting leaks for a reason as the gospel. I will not give up on this. I'm not surrendering on January 16th at 2:09 because, well, the Mets think he's gone. They think he's gone. Yeah, okay. I think a lot of things. Doesn't mean it's true yet.
Well, what we do know is that they had an exclusive window to negotiate with Pete Alonso.
Okay.
And nothing has happened.
And why is that?
I don't know.
Because neither side broke off of what they were willing to give.
If you are willing and you really want a guy back and you have an exclusive window, you're going to get him back.
They want him back on their terms. Until Boras agrees to the Met terms,
Boras is never going to come to their terms.
Well, then, is someone else?
What do you mean?
Someone else coming to Scott Boras' terms?
I don't know.
Well, if the answer is no, then where's he going? Is he going to play in Tokyo next year?
He hasn't negotiated with any of those other teams yet.
I understand that, but do you think
just became available to the Blue Jays and others?
But do you think another team is going to go to where Scott Boras wants? By the way, the answer may be yes, Teague. I'm saying I don't know. I can't assume the answer is yes.
I would think that a team that's looking for short-term help, whether first base or DH, is on a short-term deal, would be very interested in Pete Alonso.
I didn't say very interested. Do you think they'll get to the terms that Scott is insisting on that the Mets don't feel comfortable going to?
See, that's the thing. I think that's what we're disconnecting. I think that the Mets don't want to go anywhere.
Well, I don't agree with that. You don't think there's a real offer for Pete Alonso? Think it's all fake?
I don't know. I'm just getting the sense that they don't want Pete Alonso.
Oh, I'm getting a sense they want Alonso for their price, and we could disagree about that. What do you mean, why?
Why do they want Pete Alonso on a short-term deal at their price?
Because they don't view him based on his age and on the fact that he has slowed down the last few years. They don't want committed long-term monies to him.
He hasn't been excellent. And so if he's not trending in the right direction, why do you want him at all?
They want him on a short-term contract.
For what reason?
Because he can help them in 2025. The Mets' best chances of winning in 2025 includes Pete Alonso in the lineup. Am I wrong?
Mostly, yeah.
I'm mostly what? Wrong or right?
You're mostly right.
Okay, so that's why you want him back.
But there's also the unknown of the alternative, and the alternative could be Brett Beatty. Like I don't know who the alternative is. I haven't dug deep enough to say, well, this is what the Mets are going to do if they lose Pete Alonso, because we haven't thought about them losing Pete Alonso. But beginning yesterday, when you asked me about why this is going the way that it's going, I'm starting to get the sense that the Mets don't actually want Pete Alonso.
I think they want him back for their price. Now, we can disagree on how far they should go, because I disagree with the Mets. I'd go farther. I would try to get this deal done. I've got a billionaire owner who's willing to spend. It's a short-term deal in which Pete could opt out after 1 year, and worst comes to worst, it's only a 3-year contract to a guy who's 30 years old. And despite his decline over the last 3 years, I'm not fully convinced he's going to turn into like a 720 OPS player next year. So I disagree with the New York Mets. I'd go further. But I do think that they want him back at their price. And right now, Scott Boras isn't bending. Now, if the Toronto Blue Jays bend in the next 24 hours, then yes, I will be wrong. I will be devastated as a Met fan, and he'll be a Blue Jay, and the Met chances of winning in 2025 become tougher because they're further away from winning if Pete's not in this lineup. But as of right now, here's what I know. What I know is the Mets made an offer. Boras made an offer. They're not close. The Mets are saying, all right, let's go move on and make other moves. But if Scott Boras doesn't get what he wants from Anaheim or Toronto or any other team and then ends up coming back to the Mets saying, all right, you know what, we'll take that 3-year deal, I don't buy for a second that the Mets are closing the door on that. Because it would be stupid to. Because it would hurt their chances of winning in 2025. This is no longer the argument I had with you and others 5 months ago about giving the guy a 6-year contract. We're talking about a short-term deal. And what I think is going on right now is we are seeing ugly negotiations, and they're occurring in public. So we're all giving opinions now like, oh, my God, can you believe the Mets did this? Can you believe Boras did that? Until Pete Alonso signs a deal elsewhere, he is not a former Met.
No,
and I'm not going to stand here and just accept that and say, oh, gee, he's gone. Why? Because it's leaked that way? Am I supposed to be that naive?
No, I'm not saying that. Because I'm not even responding to the reports from Joel or John or Heyman and whoever it may be. I'm just getting the sense that the Mets don't feel as passionately about keeping Pete Alonso as the fan does. And the fan has a different reason for wanting Pete Alonso.
Okay, stop right there.
Than the Mets themselves do.
Let's get to those reasons, because I think this is really important. I'm going to do something really, really special right now. I'm ripping it off. I'm ripping it off my face. You know what I'm taking off? I'm taking off my fandom and my emotions.
Impossible.
No, I am. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
I'm going to become cold-hearted.
I will judge whether or not you've taken off your fandom.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be a cold-hearted sucker. I no longer care that I grew my beard out for Pete Alonso. I no longer care that he had a home run to beat the Milwaukee Brewers and keep the Mets season alive.
Okay.
I no longer care that he is 26, 27 home runs away from being the all-time home run king in New York Met history. I'm taking it all away. It's all gone. Now I'm the cold-hearted sucker who just wants to see the New York Mets win in 2025, right? Mm-hmm. He gives them the best chance to win in 2025.
I'm not disputing that. But without him, what are the options? What are the other options?
You want me to break that down for you?
Other than Pete Alonso. Obviously, the internal option is Brett Beatty.
Yeah.
Right?
But Brett Beatty plays third base. Vientos plays first base. Right. Ronnie Mauricio is hopefully healthy.
Talking about the bat.
Yeah, I think there's a few bats. By the way, there's a few bats. Jose Iglesias gets re-signed, and he plays a lot of third base. Mm-hmm. Luis Angel Acuna plays a lot of third base. Brett Beatty plays a lot of third base, with Mark Vientos playing first base. So forgetting the position shift, and obviously Jesse Winker brought in a DH. Starling Marte is going to DH. Right. There are internal options, and I just named a few, of guys who would essentially replace Pete Alonso's bat in the lineup. And while we don't know what those guys can be, I'm telling you right now, and I defy anybody to disagree because you can't, those internal options, who will get a chance to play anyway, by the way, are not better than Pete Alonso in 2025. As far as reallocations of funds, here's the thing about baseball. It's so annoying compared to the NBA and the NFL. There's no salary cap.
Right.
So when you tell me, yeah, but they're going to take the funds and they're going to buy Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott's a good reliever, Ev. Wouldn't you like that? Of course I'd love that. But you're telling me I can't have Tanner Scott and Pete Alonso? What's that? There's no salary cap in baseball.
I don't think it's matching, or at least comparing Pete Alonso to an alternative at a different position. I think the question is, what will they do if Pete Alonso is not on this team next year? Because there's not any free agent options. There's none available. One
of the other options was signing Anthony Santander, DHing him a little bit, playing Brandon Nimmo in center field. I think bringing Jesse Winker in at a much cheaper rate, $7.5 million, probably means they're not pursuing a bat like Anthony Santander. I don't think they're pursuing a bat like Alex Bregman. And for everyone out there fantasizing about Vlad Guerrero Jr., I'll say this again to you as kindly as I can.
Said it yesterday, and it's worth repeating. It's not happening.
He's not being traded by the Toronto Blue Jays right now.
Yeah.
Will the Mets sign him next year in free agency? Maybe. Sure. He's a free agent. The Mets have a lot of money. That's absolutely on the table.
Or trade for him at the deadline, perhaps.
Blue Jays struggle. Is he available? Absolutely all possibilities. The idea that that's happening now, I think, is fan fiction.
Yeah.
That's all I think it is when it comes to Guerrero Jr.
Yes.
So I'm not ripping him as a player. I'm not saying I don't want him. Again, right now, you ask me, is he a Met in 2026? Yeah, there's a really good chance of that. But guess what? Are we talking about 2026? What are we breaking down 2 years from now?
No.
I'm talking about this season. There's a baseball season coming out this season. So taking the fandom out, I know you don't believe me. I know you think I'm lying. Take the fandom out. I'm a hardcore, let's just talk ball, bro. Talking ball, bro. Pete Alonso gives them the best chance to win in 2025. And if I could bring him back on a short-term contract, I'm making it happen.
Yeah, but this almost, to me, feels like, man, I got to take this Band-Aid off, and I really don't want to. And the Mets are stealing themselves, not like stealing a base, but stealing themselves, making themselves hardened to move on from Pete Alonso. That's what this feels like to me. Not dissimilar to how they did it with Jacob deGrom. This feels like they're trying to move on and do it as painlessly as possible.
Well, it's painful. It's not painful.
I know that. But
it's not painless.
The lack of any kind of substantive comments on this, the lack of any kind of real progress on this just tells me that they're trying to do it and not make it painful for the fans.
See, this tells me that this is a rock fight. And right now, the New York Mets and Scott Boras are in a rock fight. Scott Boras wants this. The Mets are only willing to give that. They're leaking stuff out in the media. And until Pete Alonso signs a contract with another baseball team, which, by the way, may happen today. You want your blood, you may get it today. I have no idea. The moment Pete Alonso signs elsewhere, that's the moment I'll say into a microphone, he's gone, and there's nothing we could do about it. But as of right now, he's not gone.
What if this is about Pete, though, more than the Mets? Evan?
What do you mean by that?
You know, not for nothing. Put yourself in Pete Alonso's shoes. I think you just hit on everything. How many hints is a guy supposed to take?
Yeah.
He is a homegrown Met. He could be the all-time home run king of Queens, and he has sat there and just watched a whole song and dance with a player he's going to acknowledge is better than him with Juan Soto.
I like what you did there, by the way, the King of Queens.
The King of Queens.
Nice.
The whole, and I know you guys fought about it yesterday, the whole how much family means to us, how much this. This guy is dying to be able to be paid what he deems his value by the team he grew up with here. What if it's about Pete now finally going to the Mets? You know what? You're going to give me ultimatums. You're going to do this. If he has any pride at all, it's, you don't want me, I'm not begging anymore.
I love being a Met.
I think this may surprise you that I'm going to say this. It's absolutely on the table. I acknowledge that Pete Alonso is a freaking human being who's also sensitive, who may just say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
You guys don't want me. And that's possible. And I've always warned that if you get involved in a negotiation like this, where it's every dollar and it's about what we think you're worth and we're not bending, it could get ugly. And it could get personal enough for Pete Alonso to say, you know what? I'm done with you.
Yes.
So while I can't say you're right, Sean, do I acknowledge that that's absolutely a possibility right now? Of course it is. But it's not over yet. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it is because I'd be lying to you. Now, am I hurting right now as a Met fan? I am. That's where I put my fandom back on. I'm a diehard Met fan. I don't want to see this guy go away when he's going to accept a short-term contract elsewhere. That annoys me. That pisses me off.
Well, I don't think he's getting anything but a short-term contract.
That's what's going to kill me. If he ended up getting, like, here's the thing about deGrom. And it hurt me when he left. And I made that very, very clear. But I would understand, and I did understand, all right, you're going to give 5 years to a guy who's had an injury history. Like, as much as it bothered me and I was willing to take those risks, I understood it.
Yep.
And it was a small part that made me have peace with it. Him signing a 2 or 3 year deal with the freaking Blue Jays or the Angels will frustrate me because I'll say, you couldn't have done that, David.
Right.
I get you're worried about 5 or 6 years. I get it.
But this is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm saying they're stealing themselves to make this thing as painless as possible, even though it's going to be painless or painful.
It's very painful. It's very painful. So let's be in pain together. We'll hear from the Met fans coming up, 888-808-1019. We will tribute the late and great Bob Uecker, who passed away earlier today. And did Karl Anthony Towns cross a line last night? We'll address it all coming to you live from the Town Fair Tire Studios, powered by Town Fair Tire. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Get ready to elevate. I apologize. You want to go first?
Go ahead. You go first.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'm in a very...
You usually just go right into it. There was like little pause.
I know.
I'm jumping in.
You know why?
Why?
Because I'm hurting right now.
He's distressed.
You're right.
I am hurting. I'm not giving up, but I'm a human, and I'm hurting right now.
You needed that pause and breath.
You know what the problem is? I'm jealous of a lot of people in this business because what they're able to do at some point in their careers is stop caring. And I care too much.
What do you mean? Stop caring about the futility?
Well, stop caring about sports the way I did as a child.
I'm a loser.
It's a business. It's fine. It's good radio. We're all having a good time. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And I'm actually jealous of that because on a day like today, we got news. It's fun. Let's talk about it. This hurts me. I'm a Met fan. I don't want Pete Alonso gone. I don't want him going to the Blue Jays.
All right, well,
I've made that very clear. Okay. This is not fun to me, so I wish I cared less. Trust me.
I'm going to challenge you then.
Go.
In real time on the air to help you and your fellow Met fan come to terms with the inevitable, which is that Pete might not be here.
Why are you smiling when you say that?
Because I love chaos.
Smiling is his favorite. It's like Buddy the Elf.